All right. So on this paper at the top of it, it says below is a table showing the demand for frisbees and the supply of frisbees. Plot these data on the axis provided. Label the demand curve with a D and the supply curve with a S, and then answer those following questions. Now, if you'll notice, you've got a graph. It says price, quantity demanded, quantity supplied. Y'all with me? Y'all see all that? Now, the ones of you that hadn't done it, take your pencils, or your pointers, not your pencils, your pointers, and plot a demand curve beside of the price, and then take the same numbers and plot the supply with the price. Okay? Go ahead and do that now. Your hand, it should end up looking something like what I have on the board. You guys see where it says D and S? Y'all see me there? D and S. If I take at a price of $1, I'll come down here to $1, it says the demand is 300. Y'all see that? Is everybody with me? Simply come over and put a dot where 1 and 300 meet. The next one says at $2 it's 250, so I'll go to 2, come over to 250, put my dot. At $3 I'll come over to 200, put my dot. At $4 I'll come over to 150, put my dot. And if I go to 5, it's at 100. Y'all see that, right? Is anybody confused on what I'm trying to say there? All right, and then you simply connect the dots. And now we have our first demand curve. Don't worry about the D1 and the S1 just yet. Okay? You got it, Jason?
It's not coming up on the, like, can I bring it to the classroom or?
We go to the page.
Click on it in the classroom and then open it through Cami.
Open with at the top right there.
Where it says open with. Should say that, Cami. You see it now? All right. So we have our demand curves. Everybody with me there? All right. Now we're going to take the numbers under supply and do the same thing. So at $1, we'll come to $1, put a dot at 100. At $2, we'll put a dot at 150. At $3, a dot at 200. At $4, a dot at 250, and then lastly at $5, we'll put one at 300. So now we can connect the dots. Now guys, it's extremely important when we ask you how to graph these things that you graph them correctly, because your price and quantity supplied is going to be, your questions we ask you is going to be very important that it's graphed right, because if it's not graphed right, you're not going to get the right answers. Does everybody understand that? So go ahead and graph that. You got your demand and you got your supply curve. All right? And it should look like that. Again, don't worry about D1 or S1. We're just worried about D and S right now. Okay? Everybody got it? I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. All right. Now that we got it drawn, let's look down here at some of the questions that you were asked, and let's see if we can answer them. Okay? See if I can autofocus that a little bit better. See if you guys can see it. All right. So it says, under these conditions, a competitive market forces would tend to establish an equilibrium price of what? So we simply define equilibrium. It's where the supply and demand curve meet, right? That's our E. Y'all with me? So our equilibrium price, if I just simply drew a jagged line over to price, it would tell me that my equilibrium is what? $3. Y'all see that? So in that blank, make sure you have $3. Is everybody with me there? And then it says that it would be $3 per frisbee and an equilibrium quantity of 200 million frisbees. And the reason I know it's 200 is if I draw my line from equilibrium down to the quantity supplied, I end up with 200. So, what question A is basically saying, an equilibrium price for supply to equal demand, then a supplier needs to produce 200 Frisbees and sell them at $3, and then everything should be met. Does that make sense? Y'all with me on that? Y'all see how I got that from that graph? Okay. Letter B. It says, if the price currently prevailing on the market is $4 per Frisbee, then what will buyers want to buy? So in order to find that, we would come up to $4, make our little line. Y'all with me? And at $4, how many would buyers want to buy? That's a supply question, right? Because we're trying to figure out how many we'd want to buy. So I would go over to $4, I would come down, and my answer would be how many? 150. You guys see that? Does that make sense to you guys? And sellers would want to sell how many? Well, again, at $4, I would go to 4. Sellers would be supply. I would move all the way over to supply, and then come straight down, and it would say that they would produce how many? 250, correct? Does everybody see that? So under these conditions, would there be a shortage or a surplus? So think about it. Remember how we drew this out? We had a line here. This is what consumers are willing to buy. And then over here, this is what suppliers are able to produce. If price is above equilibrium, does that create a shortage or a surplus? If price is above, think about it. We're demanding 150, they're supplying 250, so we would have a what? Surplus. If you notice, I just simply circled it. And then it says, of blank million Frisbees. So we'd have how many left over? If they're making 250 and we're buying 150, we would have 100 left over, would we not? Does everybody understand that? Does that make sense? Okay. It says competitive market forces would tend to cause the price to, increase or decrease. So the idea is to get back to equilibrium, right? So in this scenario where we have too many, what are we going to have to do? Would the price have to go down or go up to get back to equilibrium? Would it decrease or increase? What's that? Yeah, it would have to go down, right? We're at a surplus. We have too many. That means we're not going to meet demand. So we're going to have to lower the price to get back to equilibrium. So at the bottom of that, it says competitive market forces would tend to cause the price to decrease. Now, what would we have to decrease it to? To what per Frisbee?
$3.
Be $3. I don't know why I put a 1 there. It would go back to $3 to create equilibrium, right? Okay. Now, at this new price, buyers would want to buy how many of them? Actually, for example purposes, I know why I put that 1 there now. In part B, make the last answer you have the number 1. So, in part C, we're going to say that the price is $1. Y'all with me? So, at this new price, buyers would want to buy how many? So we're here at 1. Come all the way over to the demand curve, and how many we want to buy?
300.
300. So, makes sense. We'll buy 300 of them at $1 a piece. It's not pretty cheap, right? So 300 million Frisbees. And sellers would want to sell how many? At $1, sellers would want to sell how many? 100. So our line's here, and our line's here. Y'all see that? So let's connect these two. Now, if they're supplying 100 and we are demanding 300, are we going to have a shortage or a surplus?
Surplus.
We're going to have a surplus. So because of this change in, as it says, price and underlying conditions. Well, underlying condition would be something that happened that no one was really expecting. So we just simply changed the price. So we would circle price in that answer, okay? The quantity demanded changed by about 150. You guys see where I got that number? Because of the change. Because originally they were producing 250 and now we only want 100. So that would be where the 150 comes from. Y'all see that? So, and then the quantity supplied would also change by about 300 because we're going from supplying 150 to 300. Y'all see that? All on the same curve here. Okay? So it would be quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Now you guys need to know the difference in that. Demand and supply is taking into consideration everything. Okay? When it says quantity demanded and quantity supplied, it is asking you at a specific price. So at this price, the quantity supplied would be 200. You guys with me? All this would be supply. That is quantity supplied. You guys get me? We're being specific. All right? Now, does anybody have any questions about how we're reading a surplus and a shortage? Does that make sense? Tell me if it don't. All right. Go on to the next paper now. I won't be able to see it. All right, so in letter D on your paper, it says if the price currently prevailing on the market is $2 per Frisbee, what would buyers want to buy? Okay, so if we go to the demand, go over to the demand curve, at $2, how many are we demanding? Right, we're still on this one. At $2, if I go over to demand, there's my
250.
we're demanding 250, which is the answer I put right there. Y'all see that? So we're demanding 250 million Frisbees, and the sellers want to sell how many? So at $2, how many they want to sell?
150.
150. Good. So under these conditions, there would be a shortage or surplus. There would be a shortage. Because we're wanting 250, they're only going to make 150. So we would circle shortage. And that would obviously be a shortage of 100 million Frisbees. 250 minus 150 is 100, right? So in a competitive market, forces would tend to cause the price to do what? So if we're right here, we have a shortage, right? That's a shortage because the price is below equilibrium. So what would make the price have to do to be competitive in the marketplace? It'd have to go up or down. It would have to go up, so there would be an increase in the price. And I put the $5, okay? Because I wanted to use all the numbers. So we're going to increase the price to $5. Okay, so at this new price. Now we're talking about the price being $5. You guys with me? It says at this new price, buyers would want to buy how many? Think about it. The price just went way up. So are we going to want to buy more or less?
Less.
Less. So at $5, we're going to want to buy how many?
100.
100. So our first answer there would be 100. And sellers would want to sell how many? Think about that. $5, that's a lot of money. So they're going to want to sell how many?
300.
300. So at this new price, buyers want to buy 100 million Frisbees, sellers want to sell 300 million Frisbees. Because of this change in, is it in price or underlying conditions? What do y'all think? It would be underlying conditions, right? Because we're trying to move from a shortage on to back to equilibrium. We're trying to find it, right? So that would be underlying conditions. The demand or quantity demanded changed by how many? Okay, so we were at $1, right? Or excuse me, we were at $2. We moved it up to $5. So at $2, the quantity demanded was 250, right? At $5, we're only demanding 100. So how many is that a shift in? It changed by how many? 150. You guys with me there? So, is that demand or quantity demanded? That would be quantity demanded because we're doing specific prices. Does everybody understand that? We're not just talking about the entire demand. We're talking about it changing from $2 to $5. So that's quantity demanded. That's specific. Is everybody with me? And again, at $2 it was 100, or excuse me, at $2 it was 150. At $5, I'm confused. Hold on. At $2, we demanded 250. At $5, we demanded 100. What's the difference in that? About 150 million Frisbees, right? So that's the next answer, 150 million. And then the supply or the quantity supply changed by 150 million. Okay, at $2, they were supplying 150. And at $5, we're supplying 300. So what's the change there? It's also 150, and it's also quantity supplied because we're doing very specific numbers. We're going from $2 to $5. If we're specific, it's quantity. If we're just talking about the supply and demand, we're talking about the entire curve. Is everybody with me there? Now, this next part was what I think is cool about supply and demand. Okay? I'm going to have to fold my paper so I can get you guys to see it. Now, here's where I get the double chart at. If you guys will notice, it says change in the supply of Frisbees. It says plot the new supply schedule. So now, if you look at my chart, we're plotting a new supply line. You guys understand that? Something happened to make the supply shift. Okay? Whatever that reason is, that's really not of concern. It just shifted right now. Okay? So, what it wants you to do is to plot a new supply line using these numbers. So at $2, put down a dot at 50. At $3, put down a dot at 100. At $4, put down a dot at 150. And at $5, put down a dot at 200. Okay? Go ahead and plot that. Y'all see it? And I'll pause this while you guys do it. Okay? So now that we have plotted the new supply for Frisbees, that is this line we have now, and we've labeled it S1, just to make sure we got the difference between supply and then the new supply. Does that make sense? All right. So After we plot the new supply schedule and label it S1, label the new equilibrium E1. Okay, now look. We haven't plotted a new demand curve yet, have we? It's not highlighted yet. So our equilibrium has to be where the S1 supply crosses the original demand. Does everybody see that? So our E1 falls at $4 and the supply of 150, or quantity supplied would be 150. Does that make sense? Y'all see that where I'm at? So, under these conditions, competitive market forces would tend to establish an equilibrium price of how much? Yep, $4. That's your first. Y'all can't see it. My first answer down here is $4 per frisbee, and an equilibrium quantity of how many? So at $4, how many are we going to supply? About 150 of them, right? Y'all see that? 150 million of them. Now, this next part is what I was telling you guys about on the board earlier, about how the supply and demand can shift. I told you if the supply or the demand shifted to the right, is that good or bad? That's an increase in things, right?
Yeah.
If it goes to the left, it's a decrease in things. So if we're going to the right, it's positive. If we're going to the left, it's negative. It's just like you guys on a number line. Start at 0. If I move to the right, we have positive numbers, right? If I move to the left, what do I got? Negative. So what does it mean by being negative? This line shifted from here to there, right? Y'all see that, right?
Yeah.
We had a shift to the negative side. So what does that mean? Well, what happened to our price? Originally, our equilibrium was $3 at 200, right? Now we had a shift because of the price, and that's our next answer down here. It says because of the change in price. Excuse me. So we went up to $4, and we're only supplying 150 of them, right? So we've got a change in price because the supply, the entire supply, because we changed the entire graph, right? So we would circle supply, changed. Y'all see that? Y'all with me on that? And both the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity changed. Obviously it changed. Price went up and quantity went down, right? So the equilibrium price, we would circle increased down here. Y'all see me? And the equilibrium quantity decreased. Y'all see how I got that? Y'all see how that works? Tell me if it don't. Anybody confused? Does everybody see why we got the answers that we got? All right. And then lastly, at the bottom of this paper, it says changes in the demand of frisbees. So what are we about to draw? A new what? A new demand curve, correct? So go ahead, use these prices to jot down your bullet points and then draw a line to them. And I'll wait on you to get that written down, and we'll talk about a change in demand. All right. So now we have a new demand curve. Did everybody label it D1? Huh?
Yeah.
All right. Now, same concept. Which way is that moving? The demand curve. Which way did it shift?
Down,
Left or right?
left,
All right. So if it shifts to the left, then what has done to the demand? Has the demand went up or has the demand went down? Remember,
Decrease.
to the right, it's going a positive way. To the left, it's negative. So if it's going left, Jace, it is what? What's happening to the demand?
Decrease.
It's going down, right? So, but where we originally were, that's a good thing, right? Because we were high. We had our price had jumped on us. So, after we plot the demand schedule, the new one, okay, it says, and label it D1. We'll label the new equilibrium E2. You'll see that? Okay. It says, under these conditions, the supply schedule at S1, competitive market forces would tend to establish an equilibrium price of what? All right, so now we're comparing D1 and S1. These are our new lines. You guys understand that? So where's our equilibrium when S1 and D1 interact or intersect?
$3.
So we're back to the original price of $3, right? So we can put down $3 in that blank. Y'all see it down there? Per Frisbee, and an equilibrium of what? So we went from supplying 200 originally at $3 to what are we supplying now? We're only going to supply 100. So obviously tells us demand has done what?
Went down.
Decreased, right? Our line moved that way. So we're going to equilibrium quantity of 100 million Frisbees. Compared to the equilibrium price in question F, because of this change in, that will be underlying conditions, because of something made it drop, right? People simply didn't want it anymore. The demand went down. The demand changed. Is everybody with me on that? As the entire demand changed. At whatever price you want to go to, everything switched. So because of an underlying condition, the demand changed. It then says the equilibrium price did what? Did it go up or down?
Down.
It went down. It decreased. And then what happened to the equilibrium quantity?
Went down.
It also went down. Okay? Now, that was your homework. That was basically what I wanted you to do online. Okay? So the ones of you that were confused, I hope that helped you out with it. The ones of you that aren't confused, that'll be okay. All right? Last thing I want to explain to you guys before the break, I will probably send you a handout that's got some of these charts on it, but I'm going to send it to you over the weekend, and you try to do it before Monday, okay? And that's for everybody. I'm talking to the A, B, and virtual people right now because they're getting recorded. But I just want you to be able to read this. Next week, you're going to have your first test. It'll deal with SOL 1, all the different types of economies, everything that we've talked about, the resources, plus this right here, okay? So does anybody have any questions about that? All right, good. And guys, even though you may have done it watching this video, please send me the handouts. I am grading the handouts, and the ones of you that have already submitted it, if you want to go back and correct your answers, please do so. All right, thank you.
I usually do downloading